Welcome to Timbers to Titles by Total Precision Inspections. Our guest today is Miss Tami Rexrode with Coldwell Banker. Okay, we're bringing in Miss Tami to allude at how we navigate the 2025 real estate market and the landscape in general. So I'll have Miss Tami introduce herself here, and then we can kind of get this thing rolling.
Well, Derrick, I'm so glad to be here with you today and so excited and Happy New Year. So excited
Absolutely. Oh
for the
my gosh.
2025 new beginnings of a new year. And so thank you for so much for having us.
Absolutely. So, Miss Tammy, explain your role with Coldwell. Obviously, you're a realtor. How long you been in the business? Some fun trinket items that people
Sure.
people need to know about their realtor here.
Sure, absolutely. I've been back in the real estate business for right at 10 years. Time flies when you're having fun, for sure.
Absolutely
It
does.
feels like just yesterday. I grew up in real estate. My grandfather was a realtor back in the day when you did your insurance and you got your accountant and your realtor all in one stop shop. So that's way back in the day. And my mother was a realtor as well. I put out a lot of signs as a kid, did all the grunt work for my mom, which was really fun reflecting. At the time, snotty brat, didn't know what I was doing other than she told me what to do every day.
That's awesome.
I went off to college, was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and did a 25-year career in retail management, and that's actually what brought me to Dallas, to the Dallas area. So when I came to a point where I wanted to um, either A, move to New York, which I wasn't going to do. I love my Texas country and I love North Texas.
Amen.
Or B, do something different. I stepped back and got back into real estate. So I feel like I just joined the family back. I just took a break there for a few years and so glad I did it. Wish I'd done it 25 years ago.
Yeah. Retail management. This is news to me.
Yeah.
So, where'd you fall into that capacity?
I worked with Estee Lauder Corporation, and really enjoyed it. I did the marketing plans for retailers like Dillard's. I did their Dillard corporate retail plans and
Hmm.
marketing, and then also did all their education programs as well for the four-state area that I lived in. So it's really interesting that equates to real estate so much because
Yes.
you are marketing continuously. You've got different markets that you're working in with a different clientele and different baselines. And how do you, and every person needs a little bit different education
Right on.
through the process based on their needs. So it does equate, but it was a great 25 years. Loved the corporation, just wasn't willing to move up to New York for that next stop.
Well, we
So it's a great marrying.
look. Texas couldn't be happier to have you. So,
Glad to be here, and I've been here
abs-
25 years now. So here we
there you
go.
go. Yep, that's it. Exactly. We're gonna kind of branch off on our first segment.
Sure.
Just again, building relationships in the real estate industry.
Hmm.
What to you? What does that mean?
Gosh, it means a lot. It means a lot. It takes, in a real estate transaction, there's about 20 different topics or places by which you're working through the process. For many people, from a buying perspective, that is the biggest investment that they will ever make in their lifetime.
Hmm.
So to have people that are knowledgeable, honest, have a high level of integrity in the process is very key. And through that is relationships of trust. And you don't trust people unless you have a relationship with them that is built on trust and integrity. So it means everything in the process:
Hmm.
honesty, integrity, knowledge.
How do you build those relationships? Like what makes a good relationship versus finding someone on social media or a Google review? Eh, our society is moving so much into the social realm that I
Yeah,
feel like the olden days of people picking up the phone and calling someone has kind of gotten pushed to the wayside. But
yeah, it's true.
how do you put the two and two together where you use Google, you use Facebook or social media, and then also leverage your relationships on finding, and then on the back end, once you find that person, how do you maintain a good relationship?
It's really interesting. Relationships are the same that they were 20 years ago that they are today.
Hmm.
If someone is reaching out to you from a Google marketing, it's just a touch. It's a do I see that person and go, okay, I can relate to that person maybe.
Yeah.
But it truly is. It goes back to the beginning. It's a build. It's a build on relationship. Are you timely? Are you following up with that person? Are you really sitting down and getting to know them? And it still is a process.
Yeah.
It's a true process. So if anyone thinks it instantly happens and they instantly trust you, I don't think that that is a good thought process as it pertains to people. It
Right.
takes time. You and I didn't know each other the first time we met. It
Hmm.
was about the third or fourth time that we really talked
Hmm.
that we realized that we understood each other a little bit better. And this is always a continuing process,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
That's just like in any other relationship. I do believe that it can get a little bit convoluted,
Hmm.
but it is great when people that you know and already trust you refer you. That's
Right.
85% of my business.
Is referrals, right? So hammering home, taking care of people that take care of you at the end of the day. So
Mm-hmm.
that
It's
is
really true.
speaks great volumes. Um, if you need someone that throws an absolutely banging Christmas party, Miss Tammy does every year.
And
So
everyone's invited too. Just
everyone's
come on.
invited. Just come on by to the Rexrode family Christmas. Um, now, in terms of like market trends, there's like 9,000, different opinions of, you got Tom Ferry speaking on one behalf. You have each realtor says something different,
It's
right?
really
So,
true. It's really
um,
true.
w- what is your take
You know,
on what is, new and upcoming? What are people going to be looking to get into? Where are they moving? When are they moving?
it's different for every single person. Some people that, of course, there's always been a trend of moving to suburbia, out of a metroplex into suburbia. And I laughingly say the metroplex is all the way to the Oklahoma border,
But it's true.
and we're working our way over to Louisiana border. But the
Yeah.
reality of it is that's just really the needs of that particular consumer, and sometimes it can be affordability, because affordability, of course, as you get away from the metroplex, becomes you have a greater value there from a price per square foot perspective or a price per
Correct.
acre perspective. But the reality of it is it's what does that client need?
Hmm.
If my job is in downtown Dallas and I need to be 5 minutes from work all the time, then moving out to suburbia is not for
Not for
you.
you.
2025, it's really interesting. Um, Historically, the year after an election year, which presidential election happens every 4 years,
Hmm.
the year after a presidential election is a busy year in real estate. People calm down and then they start their goals and start putting those things into action. So statistically, we see an uptick in real estate movement, so to speak, whether it be investing
Hmm.
or moving to your personal home, first time buyers, etc. But there is an uptick historically. So that's the one trend that I expect to continue in 2025.
Right. I know you can't forecast the interest rates or anything like that, or regulatory changes or anything.
For sure.
This is all kind of a blur for everyone, right?
For
So
sure.
how does a buyer navigate all these avenues of when to enter the market, or what's the right time, or is there a right time, or is it based on your personal like availability
Abilities.
and available of funds or anything like that?
For
Obviously
sure.
family situations play in, jobs, like
You said it perfectly. You
what's an
really
entry
did.
point?
The reality of it is that interest rates are going to be what they are. If
Correct.
you look over time, over a 50-year time span, the average interest rate is somewhere in about 8%.
Which is
So the reality of it is that when we talk about interest rates being at 6 and 7% right now, they are still below the 50 plus year average as it happened. There wasn't very long ago when interest rates were 10 and 12%, and people were thrilled if they got 8.5 or 9% interest rates.
Can't even imagine.
So if we sit around and rent and pay and throw that money away in rent, waiting for interest rates to be the perfect time, there's never going to be a perfect time.
Right.
I think when people pause like that, that means that they need more information on what's best for them. And I love to really sit down with people, look over their finances, look over their goals, try to see what they're paying in rent right now, if that's what they're doing, or if they're living with family members, and put together a plan so that they can be homeowners, because it is the one investment you make in life
Mm-hmm.
that truly you get returns on continuously. Maybe not that first 2 years, but if you look back in 5, 6, 10 years of owning a property, that is an investment that you will get money back on, or for it's the best investment you can make. It's just a matter of when is the best time for you. Because if it's stressful and it doesn't feel good, then it's not the right time for you.
Right.
But we can put together a plan where it will be the right time for you.
Right. Right. And I think that's the key for a lot of clients is there is no right time to enter the market,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a smart time to enter the market based on your situation. So
For certain.
but you don't find the smart time unless you work with knowledgeable people at the end of the
So
day.
true.
So getting that key concept about how to, when to work with someone that's done it for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Like, why would you want to endure that process by yourself? So what are, obviously we're here in the Metroplex right now, but where are emerging markets and, opportunities for buyers in the Metroplex right now?
It's really interesting. You should say if I'm talking about a first-time buyer,
Mm-hmm.
if I get them out in suburbia, when I'm going northeast, I can, like the Royce City area, Greenville is coming alive.
Right.
It used to be kind of sleepy, but it's coming alive as well. If I go out east, I hit the Canton area. It's growing. It used to be farmland, etc.
Yeah.
But you can find some great entry level properties. When I go down south to Midlothian, when I go out west, I hit the Azle area and
Right.
Weatherford.
Right.
So if you're looking for I want the biggest bang for my buck, you do tend to piece out into suburbia. If you're looking for something that is more urban, it's going to be what it is there. You see a lot of trends around the airports, of course. That has always been a big hot hub
Right.
of real estate. Is if I need for my work to fly in and out of airports, then that is where I should obviously be close to if I can.
Right. And I've done a couple inspections too, like South Dallas area. There's like
Mm-hmm.
gentrification,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that stuff going on too. So like,
It's very true.
how do you determine it? Like, because I know there's probably a lot of reservation when it comes to buying a property like that, because you look out, you might have a family at that point,
Yeah, it's very
and getting into a real estate transaction, something that might have a lot of equity 2
Mhm.
years from now, but maybe, you question the safety of the neighborhood at the times. Like, how do you orientate, those type of things?
true. Yeah, that really depends on your mindset of the client.
Mhm.
It's such a smart move. And when you see, like there's lots in the South Dallas area, it's amazing to see what's happened. Look at what's happened with Oak Cliff.
Right. Yeah.
Prices have skyrocketed now, but
It's crazy.
10 years ago, it was in its transition. So it just depends on your mindset. If you feel confident and comfortable in a long-term investment through the process, it's very smart moving.
Right.
Very smart moving.
Right.
The scrape and builds. It's interesting. I've got 3 different lots down in South Dallas that we're looking at. We're watching everything happening around it. A big park will be here in 5 years.
Right.
If you're willing to think out 5 years, then it's the perfect investment for you now, because
Correct.
what I'm selling for $65,000, which is a great price today on that lot, a year, 2, 3 years from now, it'll be $100,000 lot, and I know that.
And that's equity.
It's just a matter of, what is your
40,000,
timing like
yep.
and your mentality.
That's so true.
Great investors understand it quickly.
And that's the key. So, no, you hit that perfectly. In terms of, finding the right realtor. How do you navigate that landscape of finding the right? Obviously, relationships is hands down like your first opportunity. But if you're kind of if you're a client that's on the fence or doesn't know where to start, where do you start looking?
Oh my goodness, you're talking. Most of the time you'll see that buyers will reach out and ask friends. Who have you worked with in real estate? I a couple of questions I would make sure and ask if I was asking a friend and I
Right.
was looking for a realtor, is I'd ask for someone that is hyper local, that really understands their area that they're kind of
Yep.
looking in.
Geographical demographic. Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And how long have they been in the business? And do they typically work with that type of person? If is it a home? Is it a first time buyer? If I'm a first time buyer, who works a lot well with first time buyers and are great educators through that process.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of questions I would really ask. And then I would I work with Dave Ramsey in that group. And I love what he says. Talk to three different realtors, because sometimes it boils down to they've got the same information, they've got the same abilities, but what matches your personality and where do you feel most
Right.
confident with? When I work with inspectors or with lenders,
Hmm.
there's a question that I do ask my clients. Do you feel most comfortable working with women or men? Because sometimes they would prefer to work with a woman lender, and sometimes they prefer to work with a men lender, male lender.
Yeah,
You,
that is
you never
crazy. I
know what the
never thought about
mindset
that.
is.
Yeah.
So giving lots of choices and really having those conversations so that they can make intelligent choices for themselves.
Right.
I'm not for everyone. I am not for everyone, and that's okay. That's okay. But I love to talk to everyone.
Yeah. Um, in terms of, the value of a realtor, I kind of want to touch base on the value of a realtor because as an
Sure,
inspector, I see a whole lot of value, right?
sure.
And the recent NAR settlement, all that stuff, I think has
Ah,
only brought the cream of the crop to the surface
mm-hmm,
because people never truly understood how much a realtor did in the transaction process
mm-hmm,
until you step back and you understand as an inspector, I'm only one piece of like 10 individuals
mm-hmm.
that you have to coordinate schedules with, right?
Right.
So you have the lender involved, you got title, you have to keep in touch with the listing agent, you got to make sure that everything's on point, that these
Mm-hmm,
deadlines get hit, so when you can close, like everything involving the property is
mm-hmm.
100% spick and span prior to the arrival of everyone shoots the champagne bottle off and like it's all like a good happy family, right? But just explain to clients like all the steps involved in what a realtor truly does for the client.
Absolutely. When you're talking about from a buyer side, that's what I'll talk to a
Yeah,
buyer
for
side,
sure.
because I
To a
think
buyer
that,
side.
that you, generally speaking, all those sellers should get inspections as well prior to
Should,
listing.
should,
But
right?
let's talk about the buyer. There's 20 basic steps in the process, but when you start at the beginning of finding them a lender that is a great educator that can give them the choices. And also be involved in that process to really understand what their pieces are that are good for them. What is the best? What is the best? Not just a lender, but what is the best process by which they can have the most value with whichever loan type that they choose, because
Right.
there are many out there. So that piece is not something that your average buyer would just jump out there and ask those questions. So that can
Correct.
really add value. Once we find a property, writing the contract is usually where I pay for myself. Because if I was doing for sale by owner
Mm-hmm.
and I just was the Susie buyer and I just went in there and let the owner write the contract, more than likely I'm going to spend about $6,000 that otherwise I wouldn't have. So I can generally, when I write an offer and negotiate those elements within the contract,
Yep.
I pay for myself right there
Done.
before I even get started on all of the processes of
Doesn't
it.
even include the showings or
Right,
the
right,
extra times,
right,
hourly pay of
right. Because there are so many financial elements in the contract that can either cost a buyer
Yep.
or save a buyer in that process. So
Right.
that's number one. That's number one.
That's so true.
Then coordinating and making sure that we do inspections, that the appraisal is completed, that any of the repairs needed are financially appropriate for everyone, that the buyers get educated on the property through the process. That's just little cream. That's just little pieces of the puzzle that need to happen. There's so many times that I have run across buyers in the past that purchased a property, never did inspections, never
Yikes.
did some of the due diligence that I forced to happen
Yes.
in the process because I can't sleep if they don't.
Right.
And then on the back side of it, they've gone. I had no idea that I had a 20-year AC unit. I had no idea that I had an XYZ. So it's not about that they probably would have purchased the property anyway,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
But at least the knowledge of a 20-year HVAC system
And negotiability. Right.
and
Right.
negotiability
Yeah, right.
can certainly make a difference. I call it going into it eyes wide open. I want to make sure that everyone knows everything they can possibly know, pros and cons, as they make intelligent decisions on the purchase.
Absolutely. No, yeah. And man, you speak the truth there because, and it doesn't even scratch the surface because, right, the contract itself is very important. The terms that are put in there, but the ability that realtors have, in my opinion, to go out and find the trusted individuals or help push in the right direction
Mhm.
of people who might be worth
Mhm.
contacting is really valuable as well, right? Because
So
you
true.
have someone that takes care of title. Maybe there's a crazy probate situation or something that comes up,
Mhm.
or maybe you're buying land and mineral rights. You want to argue that into your land acquisition,
Mhm.
right? Or something,
Right.
God forbid, you're out in East Texas. There still is oil out there. I don't know,
Yeah.
right? But
Who has those? Yeah.
you
Do we need a
definitely want
landman for
that,
that?
right? So
Right.
figuring out these little, intricacies is extremely
Mhm.
important in terms of the value of the realtor itself, right? What are areas that on the buyer's behalf? What are areas where sellers are usually willing to bend?
Well, that's a good question. Depends on how it depends on the mindset of the seller, and every seller is just a little bit different.
Right.
As it pertains to the contracting, there's a couple of negotiable pieces there. As it pertains to surveys, which can cost $2,000+ these days. Title policies are a very expensive piece. When I get over into like the inspection process, and
Mm-hmm.
and let's say we're in a 20-year-old home. We realize that this is not a new home, right?
Right.
Um, we kind of know usually going into inspections what the seller's attitude is going to be, and my buyer usually knows that by that time. I try to feel that piece out so we can understand, what the expectations are. We've studied the seller's disclosure, which can be a legal document when it's filled out, it becomes one very
Right.
quickly.
Right.
Um, I find that sellers they typically know big picture items that are maybe not 100% at their home. Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes you teach them things that they never knew about their house, right?
Right.
But I see them, typically bend on big piece items, HVAC systems, roof
Mm-hmm.
systems,
Foundations.
foundation
Kind
to a
of.
degree,
To a degree.
depending on if it's truly an issue or not. But it all depends. But big picture pieces of it, we usually know what
Yeah.
we're walking into when we walk into it with you.
For sure. On that end, like let's say you have phrase quote unquote as is property,
Mhm.
right? Like what
Mhm.
can you explain to clients out there what the difference between maybe a possible negotiable property is
Mhm.
and an as is property? Because some people go into things thinking that they can navigate the waters when
It
they're
was sold
signing
as
an as
is.
is deal.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what? I think you've got to understand what that true meaning is. If they're saying this property is $100,000 and it's being sold as is, that means you're doing your inspections for your list of repairs.
Correct. There you
So,
go.
so I say that let's Many times when it's as is, they don't really even want to do an inspection period. But let's say we've negotiated a 5-day inspection period, so we can just understand how much it's going to cost us to get this in the shape it needs to be in. Um, so we still love to do the inspection so that way they can study it and understand their cost of repairs on the backside once they purchase.
For sure.
Simple
No,
as that.
that's perfect. So, what are past the inspection? I don't deal much with appraisals. You've had, a significant more time. What items commonly fail appraisals? Like what would fail that process where homeowners should be alerted or aware of going into maybe certain transactions?
You know what? Appraisal is an opinion of value of the property. At the end of the day, that's an opinion of the value of the property, and then depending on the loan type that the buyer has got, as to whether that becomes significant or
Right.
not. It's significant no matter what, but it is one person's opinion of value, and it's very educated. Don't get me wrong,
Right.
but the reality of it is if I have an FHA process behind my loan,
Yep.
or a VA, it states that the lender is only going to lend based on that appraised value of what happens. So if we have a shortfall within that appraised value, then we know that we have to either A, negotiate the price, or B, have the funds to bring the difference to the table when we close.
Correct.
Most of the time when that happens, most of the time we know that we feel pretty confident that we're going to either appraise or we know that we might have a slight shortfall. And we already had a pre-discussion on it.
Right.
Other elements that can run into play on that is in an FHA, they also do a layer of inspections. And it's not a full Derrick inspection. It
Correct.
is, do I have workable appliances in the property?
Right.
Do I have peeling paint? There's a list. You know that list, but
Yeah.
it's not a full inspection, and I think people think it is, but it's not. It's light things. If I don't have a stove in that home,
Yep.
and I have an FHA note behind it, we know up front that we've got to figure out who's putting a stove in that property prior
Correct.
to an
Yeah,
FHA appraisal.
I did run into one of
We've
those.
crossed
It's
that
like the
bridge
stove
before.
has to work. It's got to work. So
Yeah, exactly. It's got to work too as well. So we have gotten ahead of those situations before in properties.
right. So
I hope that answered that question a little
absolutely.
bit.
No, that's awesome.
I love appraisals, and I love seeing their square footage. I love it when clients keep their appraisal in their closing packet, which a lot of times they don't because it comes
Right.
in at the very end, so that we can really look at the square footage that was
What it-
measured on the property versus what is on the tax rolls. Sometimes when I'm listing a property, I can find money there.
Right. True. That is, again, work with a realtor. Work with a realtor. So in terms of different types of construction, new construction was such a big push
Yeah.
towards the end of last year and through the summer of last year. I feel like personally, because interest rates were higher and they were offering such competitive rates. But we got new construction, we got pre-existing homes, and then you have, on the back end, you can acquire land and plan to build,
Yeah.
right? Or not build and just acquire land and
Hold.
use it as an investment,
Yeah.
right? So, in terms of new construction, what are the navigating terms in terms of that? Why would you want to use a realtor in a new construction? Like everything should be spick and span, right? Because it's brand new. But why would someone want to use a realtor for that specific transaction?
Sure. I'm going to go back to what I just stated a minute ago. Writing the contract and then negotiating those terms become extra important when it comes to new construction.
Yep.
Because the new construction, they want you pay for everything. The buyer pays for every ounce of the closing cost scenario. And it can be very, very expensive, including HOA transfer fees, which can be thousands of dollars. So upfront, talking through those processes, how much, what can we negotiate such that that doesn't happen. Now, new construction is caught up In COVID, there was no new construction. It's
Right.
taken, now we're in 2025,
Right.
and so it's taken almost
5 years
5
later.
years
Yep.
for it to truly catch up. So now it is caught up. It is competitive in the market. But I also want to say, human beings build those homes, and human beings make mistakes. And a lot of times when you're in new construction and you're a buyer, that they don't necessarily give you, they don't say, hey, you should get a third party inspection, because what instead they say is, well, we give you a 1 year bumper to bumper, warranty on the property. Well, that is not enough, because humans built it. They're not perfect. So I encourage every single time to get a general inspection
Mm-hmm.
of new construction, and we do always find a handful of things that were not correct. Nothing like moving into your brand new home and the HVAC system not working. You found that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They didn't know it because no one was living in there. They didn't purposely do it,
Mm-hmm.
but human beings put it in.
Right.
So that's the story on that. I can always save them. Just going back to that contract
Right.
again,
Right.
I can pay for myself in that contract.
You mentioned warranties with new construction. Like, what
Yes.
do people need to be on the alert for warranties? Because I
Sure.
know sometimes, obviously they're doing the 1, 2, 10. Some builders do 1, 2, 6.
Yeah.
What needs to be in place to really help clients, proceed forward with those new constructions?
Well, as it pertains to those warranty programs, it's getting knowledgeable about what they do have to offer.
Right.
When it's a 1-2-6, which we're seeing a lot more of now than the one, it was always 1-2-10.
Oh yeah.
Now we're seeing
Extra
1-2-6.
4 years.
But let me tell
a
you
lot
what
of
that
stuff
means.
goes wrong.
One is the first year bumper to bumper
Mm-hmm.
on the property. On 2, it's usually your mechanicals.
Yep.
It's your plumbing,
HVAC.
HVAC system, and then the 6 is your foundation, or 10 is foundation or structural. Structural.
Right.
It's not just foundation; it's just structural, in general. And so with those, you do get those warranties. They buy them through a company. Some builders hold them in house.
Hold them in house. That would be my next question. How many
So-
of those builders actually take accountability for their work versus outsourcing the warranty?
It depends on the builder,
Mhm.
and their reputation's on the line. But the reality of it is, most of them come from an outside vendor, and that's really the ones I prefer, because I
Right.
know if they do decide to leave the business,
For sure.
at least I've got this.
No, that's perfect.
The reality of it is, though, for caution for people when they're doing those warranties is that when it comes to the structural piece of it, there's a lot of caveats there. The buyers want to make sure that they're doing is that they are maintaining the foundation, drip lines, etc., and taking care of it.
Irrigation,
Otherwise,
proper
yeah,
irrigation.
proper irrigation. You know all the things
Yes.
there.
That's
They
a
got to
thing,
make
but
sure that they read that fine print, because you're so excited. You finally you're closed on your property. You throw those paperwork in, and you never look back again. And if you're not taking good care of the foundation in the minimum standards that they have, they can
yeah, and then the Texas heat
void.
hits in the summer
void that
and sucks all
warranty.
the water out from the soil. And your
Yes.
first year of home ownership, you have a giant crack of settlement on your foundation. Hey, did you irrigate
Did
the
you- yeah.
landscape around your
Did you
foundation?
do your
No,
drip
well, I
lines?
haven't ran that. Oh, well, you can pay for it then.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So you have to kind of read that kinda. It's not kinda. You need
have to
to
read. You should.
read that fine print.
Yeah,
on,
and
on
that's
the
and that's
warranty
really what I want to
process.
get out to clients, because you and I both know, like, everyone's trying to look out for their own wallet at the end of the day, but we are trying to help clients realize, like, hey, make sure you do your due diligence, work with the realtor, but then also understand what the realtor is assisting and providing, you
Right.
through the process. In terms of pre-existing homes, like, pre-existing homes are not bad investments either, in my opinion. Like,
Sometimes they're better investments.
absolutely,
It
but
depends on location,
explain
amount
why.
of land it's sitting on.
Right.
Construction abilities. Absolutely. You can do new construction. Are you going to tell me that lumber is better than the lumber that was used 15 years ago?
No.
it's not.
Right.
It's not
That's right.
not necessarily at all. So it really does depend on the detail of the build of what's happened. If I walk into an existing home and it is 10 years old and I feel not a movement in that foundation, that's a
You know,
solid build.
it was built right. Yeah,
That's a
because it's
solid
weathered
build.
a lot of.
When I'm in new construction, can I tell that?
No, cannot.
So I think that when people get excited about the shiny new penny,
Yeah.
they also need to look at size versus what they're buying too. A
Right.
shiny new penny is 1,100 square feet for 300,000. Just using a number,
Right.
300,000. My gently used property that's 10 years old would be 2,000 square feet on a larger piece of land, which land is the one thing you can't get any more of. There's only so much
Correct.
on this earth. On a
Correct.
bigger piece of land for the same number. Now, do I have an older HVAC system?
Yep.
Yes, possibly. How old is my roof?
Yep.
Possibly this
Age
10 years old.
plumbing, maybe.
So you have to balance that
Yeah.
out and say what's it worth to me? What makes me feel the most comfortable?
Yeah. And on the inspection standpoint too, I don't want people to look at pre-existing homes either and look at my report. You hire me to do a job and go through your house with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah.
It's not my responsibility at the end of the day to make you choose or, be happy with it. But what my report does is allows you the opportunity to get these maybe aging HVAC systems. It allows someone to come out and service the system,
Mm-hmm.
look at it, and give the buyer a objective number what it will cost to bring that system back to an operating potential,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Same with plumbing and electrical. Those two conditions, I'm sure, come up on a lot of inspection reports,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like those things have changed exponentially in the last even 5 to 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
For sure.
I do want to educate clients in the fact that we're out here just trying to get that buyer, not across the finish line, but across the finish line with a good product, right? Whether it's new construction, pre-existing, it's just all around. In terms of land purchases, like what comes into that acquisition?
Yeah, I want to back up to
Okay.
existing properties
Okay.
first, though. I think that the number one job of an inspector, and you know this, is to
Hmm.
really educate that buyer on the property. And every inspection report is 40 plus pages long.
Correct.
And I get up front, tell people up front before we ever meet you, um, to make sure that doesn't completely freak you out.
Yes, ma'am.
There's no perfect process. There's no perfect home, and then the report's going to be 40 pages long. And so
Absolutely.
that way we can really make sure that they understand the process. It teaches about the house more than it's amazing that the amount of information that they have, so they can make intelligent decisions
So true.
on it. Do I expect that 10-year house to act like a new house in its elements? Absolutely not.
Nope.
And if my client is putting an offer on a 10-year-old home and we understand those elements, we shouldn't be freaked out by coming into your inspection.
Right.
We really shouldn't be.
Right.
As it pertains to land, gosh, it's a great process. You have to really you're not as involved in land purchases, of course, because you're not out there inspecting it unless it's got an improvement on it.
Right.
But the reality of it is it's diving into deed restrictions. What can I do with that land if there are some survey lines, flood zones? What do I have on that land to get as much information?
When you talk
up
about
front?
flood zones, is that just basically, what's serviceable land,
Right.
what can be used, basically?
Right,
So if it's
for
in a
sure.
flood zone, it can't be used,
You
obviously.
can't put
so
in a permanent improvement that's a
Correct.
home on it. I mean, you can, it wouldn't be very smart. I mean,
Right.
you can certainly get flood insurance on a property, on your and we've got
Expensive.
houses out there. It's what
Or not
it
really.
can be, but it's not as expensive as people say it. I mean,
I got
you have
you.
to just price it. It depends on where it is.
Right.
There's different elements of the flood zones. There's 100-year, there's 300-year, there's levee
Okay.
protected flood zones.
See, this is all information I have no
yeah,
idea
so
about.
you've
but
got
this
lots of
is
different flood zones
awesome.
to deal with on that piece of it. But when we're looking at land and we're wanting to build on it, we look at the FEMA flood maps. There's a lot of that kind of detail that we look at.
Awesome. You know, kind of our last topic before we kind of, bring in the closing, but, hot topics of 2025, there's so many things to talk about here. Obviously the rise of AI in real estate and how that's, technology is assisting agents across the board, maybe, shifts, in terms of how many generations are living under one roof because things are
Yeah.
more expensive, right?
Yeah. Well,
Affordable housing, suburban. You already touched on this one with like remote work flexibility, right?
mm-hmm.
People moving to suburban areas, and maybe renovating that pre-existing to bring it up to par. Like
Yeah.
what do you think are going to be topics of 2025 that might bring people in, or are going to be really intriguing things to watch?
Well, I think as it pertains to North Texas,
Mm-hmm.
we're still a very affordable place to live.
Mm-hmm.
Our economy is very strong, no matter what happens and around us, and businesses are still moving in droves. So with that comes lots of different mindsets on the build. We started seeing multi-generational build and construction
Yep.
increase back during COVID. Um, it's kind of flattened out a little bit, but it's still there, and still a process where people are looking for that mother-in-law suite, or they're looking for that secondary master within the home. So that I feel like is going to continue in the process. But it is a specific client looking for that particular property. Work from home is still happening, so that office is needed in the home.
Yes, ma'am.
Whether it be used for your work home, or if it's used as a secondary kids playroom, that multifunctional room has been important, and it's continuing to be important in 2025 and forward.
Right. So, well, I think most importantly, closing. How do people get a hold of you, Tami? Like, how
Oh,
do people reach out? Where can they find you? I know you're here in Forney, and
yeah, you know what? I work for the Coldwell Banker Apex Group, and
mm-hmm.
my broker has 23 offices throughout the Metroplex, and so therefore my key goes into 23 offices in the Metroplex. So I'm truly easy to access at my phone, which is also my cell phone at 214-418-8332. I can also, and I text, email, etc. I can also put up my information on the board when we're done here,
For
because
sure.
I like to communicate how people like to communicate. If they like to communicate via email, I absolutely have my email address, and it has always been what it is, and that is Tami@rexroderealestate.com. I can text, phone, email, and meet in person for sure. I
There you
always
go.
want to meet you in person a couple of times,
There you go.
so that I can answer any questions.
No, this has been really fantastic. I can't appreciate you more for coming out and giving me your time to educate. Right. So we're in the business of education, as you had
Absolutely.
discussed earlier, and I think this is really the key concept of 2025 is educating our clients moving forward. So key takeaways from today: obviously building strong relationships in the real estate industry. Market trends. Understanding what your family needs and how to get there, and leverage the realtor to get there, right? Maybe key considerations of buying a home, whether it's new construction, pre-existing, or a land acquisition, right? Understanding the different caveats. Again, help with a realtor can help you leverage and build your financial success through property transactions, right? And just understanding the value of a realtor, especially after the settlement came through. I know there was just a ton of heat on y'all, but it doesn't,
Yeah.
people need to understand that realtors are extremely valuable, like very, very important individuals in this whole transaction process. They're the connecting piece. They bring multiple parties together, on a multi-person level. So it just helps us as a client, get through and navigate these waters. So appreciate you joining Timbers to Titles. Again, Total Precision Inspections here. trying to connect the dots on a lot of things, but contact me, 682-232-9606. Really happy to have Miss Tami out here today and the Rexrode team. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Derrick.
Yes,
Enjoyed
ma'am.
it.
Till
We'll
next
do it
time.
again.